Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. BlenderEd, Blender HD, if you want to follow me on Twitter. And it's Friday, January 13th. Oh, it's Friday the 13th. It's Unlucky Friday. Maybe you don't play DFS today because everyone's getting unlucky. Maybe you should because everyone else is going to get unlucky and you win tonight. But you could join me here in the morning. Unstructured learning for DFS strategy. Good morning to the chat in the YouTube comments. I see you guys in there. Give me those thumbs ups. Thumbs. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Good morning, Wataz, Billy Dynamite, Mr. Richard, Jay Debray, Defix, Apocalypse, Chase Simmons, Bart B. What are we talking about today? Well, we're talking about lineup simulations. Okay, we were going to talk about that yesterday, but we're kind of still this week talking a lot about projections. And I think next week we'll be talking a whole bunch about projection stuff also. So if you have any questions about projections, how to use them, how to use a lineup tool like Lineup HQ, a lineup builder with projections, aggregating projections, reading projections, anything to do with that, submit your questions at theoryofdfs.com. I'll probably bang out a whole bunch, like a kind of a mailbag. We got James on Monday. Maybe we'll do mailbag with McCool. Maybe we'll do some stuff on Tuesday. So send them in, especially if they're on that topic. If they're on some other topic, you could send them in as well. I pile them up, and that's how I kind of break down what we can talk about on shows. I'm answering your questions, always in the YouTube chat. So you could talk amongst yourselves. You could ask questions to follow along, and it doesn't matter. Do whatever you want in the YouTube chat. But today, we're talking about, obviously, as I preach, lineups, not players. That you're not choosing players, you're choosing lineups. And we talked a lot about what projections are, that they're not just simply this FPTS. They're not predictions. It's not that Domantas Sabonis we predict is going to score 51 points. No, that's just the 50th percentile outcome on his projected range of outcomes, which is one standard deviation range is 37 to 66. That's what the floor and ceiling means. One standard deviation below, one standard deviation above. So it looks something close, especially in basketball, to a normal distribution. Now, it's not completely normal, right? It's not perfectly normal because players do have slightly different floors, slightly different ceilings. So some players projected on a day may have a little bit more outcomes towards the minus one standard deviation and less at the ceiling, right? Floor and ceiling. That's where the floor and ceiling are, where my mouse is, right? The 68.26% zone, right? There's one standard deviation up and plus and minus, okay? So some may have a little bit more outcomes on the floor side. Some may have a little bit more outcomes on the ceiling side. They have a lower floor and a higher ceiling, or a higher floor and a lower ceiling. But even with our projections, that may only be the difference of 2-3 points, maybe. I mean, it's not drastic. They're not like, well, he's 10-point higher ceiling than this other guy at the same price, similar projection type of thing. Oh, they both have a 35 median projection, but one guy has a 65 and this guy has a 52. Like, it's not going to be that dramatic, but maybe a couple of points here or there. And that's represented in the floor and ceiling columns, right? So if you were to choose, let's say, between Steph Curry and Julius Randle at a very similar price, like we see here that Julius Randle actually has a higher floor by about 1.5 points and a higher ceiling by about 2.5 points. So in general, I mean, from a percentage standpoint, if we played this slate over 1 million times, if you constantly made these decisions, Julius Randle has a better distribution of his range of outcomes than Steph Curry. Does that mean that Steph Curry can't? I mean, look at the difference. 32 to 59, and this is 34 to 61. It's not that much different. It's not that dramatic. So it's like from a mental health standpoint, like we talked about yesterday, it doesn't make Julius Randle a so much better play in a vacuum than Steph Curry, right? We take a look at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, right? 37 to 62. Oh, that seems pretty good. Even better than Randle or Curry at a similar price, right? We even take a look at Trae Young at 10-1. We take a look here. It's like Shy Giggles Alexander, according to our 10:30 a.m. projections, which with all these Q tags and everything in NBA doesn't matter until later in the day. But we see here that Shea actually has a higher ceiling by a little bit, but a much higher floor by 3 points or so from Randall, 3.5 points almost, and then up from Curry about almost 5-point higher floor, which means 85% of the time, right? It's the 15th percentile. 85% of the time, Curry gets at least 32. Randall gets at least 34. SGA gets at least 37. 15% of the time, Curry gets 59 or more, 61 or more for Randall, 15% of the time. SGA, 15% of the time, 62 or more. That's how you read these columns, okay? Now, obviously, we're like I said before, we're not playing players, we're playing lineups. So, like, just itemizing it, because you could have to compare it. You have to adjust the salary, and that's what this RGV column is, right? But only the RGV column, the salary adjusted value plus minus, is only based on the median, on this mean or median column, not on the ceiling, not on the floor, right? So there's some guys that have slightly different distributions that are projected. So how do you judge between I want to sacrifice floor for ceiling, especially if you're playing GPPs, or you just want to sacrifice ceiling for floor if you're playing cash games? But how do you do that on a lineup level when you're not like picking players? Like if I'm not comparing necessarily SGA to Randall, like these 1v1 type of comparisons. Well, that's why you build lineups, right? And typically in a normally distributive type of sport, which is basketball, the higher median lineups as a whole, all 8 players together, so your projection sum is going to be a good judge of the lineups, ability to score points. Some may be slightly higher than others because remember that the range of outcomes, some players are tilted a little bit more towards the ceiling, some are tilted a little bit more towards the floor. Some have a median in the middle that is very similar, but their range of outcomes is kind of a little shifted over. So, like, how do you choose? How do you choose players? Well, you're not choosing players. Like I said, I'm going to repeat it again. You're not playing players. You're playing lineups. Okay, so let's say we built, right? Let's say we built like the optimal median lineup or something like that. That right now, based on our current projections, is 295.94 at 49.5K. So we have all these players: McConnell, Demhart, Keldon Johnson, Najee Marshall, Miles Turner, Levine, Gordon, Vooch. 295.94. If we ran 20 lineups and we just said, okay, what are the top 20 optimal from a median standpoint, right? So we're going to build 20. I left the default settings. I should get the top 20 or somewhere close to that. So we see this lineup here first, right? 295.94. The next lineup is 295.67. And this one has Draymond Green instead of Najee Marshall. Yeah, instead of Najee Marshall. I think that's the only difference. Okay? Slightly lower median projection. This next one is 295.61. This one has Benedict Mathurin. Obviously, people are out for the Pacers, I'm assuming. All right, so this one has Benedict Mathurin in it. And Isaiah Stewart. So it's like a 2v2 off of this lineup over here. No Eric Gordon in it. You can scroll down. Here's 295.16. And with Bojan Bogdanovic, Kobe White. I'm assuming is DeMar out or something? Right, because I haven't been playing NBA DFS. So you see 295.16. Here's 294.96. This one has SGA in it and Stewart in it. Like the differences between lineups isn't that dramatic. Most of these lineups have Nembhard and Keldon Johnson. 19 out of 20 have McConnell and or Levine. 17 out of 20 have Miles Turner. 14 out of 20 have Vooch. 11 out of 20 have Gordon. So like from a median perspective, these are the high medians, high salary adjusted value players. That most likely, you can tell by the ownership, you can kind of build your lineups around. Maybe not with all of them for GPPs, but for cash games, you're probably going to be jamming most of these guys in. But the lineup differences from a median standpoint aren't that dramatic, right? Let's get back to yesterday. Which lineup do I play? 1 or 2 or 3 or 4? If you're playing head-to-heads or double-ups. The differences between these lineups are minuscule, right? They don't beat the rake. So if you're playing an opponent that is choosing between like the top 5 of these lineups, and you're choosing between the top 5 of these lineups, you're not going to beat the rake in the long run. You're not. You're just simply not. You're not going to have more than a 9-10% advantage over someone. We could show this through lineup simulations. So like we say, we take a look at here and we go, okay, here's the range of outcomes for these players. We have a median, we have a floor, we have a ceiling. So basically we have these points. We have this tippy top point over here at the median. We have the 1 standard deviation below and the 1 standard deviation above, right? Well, how can we simulate? How can we go over and like pretend the slate happened, and what happens? What do they score based on this range of outcomes for each player? And then combine those 8 players in your lineup, what do they look like together? How do we do this? Well, if you get the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports for advanced players, right, the second course, it includes Excel tools. If you have Microsoft Excel, we include tools for you to do things like this, okay? So I'm going to switch over, and I'm going to take these lineups. I'm going to take, the lineups that we made, and let's say you're choosing, and I'm still getting this bubble up over here. Come on, stop it. Can I get rid of it? Come on, get rid of it. Okay, there we go. We got rid of it. We got rid of it. Okay. So let's say let's choose between, here's the Draymond Green lineup that's only a 1v1. Let's get rid of that. Here's Mathurin turn. Okay, here's a 2v2. This one looks like a 2v2. Right, here's the Shy lineup. The KJ Mar. Okay, let's get rid of the ones below it, just for now. Just so I could use them as an example. So we only have 4 lineups, I guess. Delete these in lineup page. Oh, I could have just clicked the shortcut, right? Kobe White lineup, the Shy lineup. And we're going to go here, delete all lineups below. Okay. So I got these 4 lineups. So I'm going to switch over to my lineup simulation screen in Excel. It's a simple Excel tool that we built, that James built. I didn't do anything, right? So the first thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to show you how to use this. Very simple. If you've never used Excel in any extended functionality, if you know how to cut and paste, right? That's all you need to know, right? You don't have to do anything special in Excel. It's all made easily for you with different tabs, exactly where to put what information, and little buttons for you to use. Okay? So don't be scared. So I'm going to go to this little button up here. It says download players in the slate, right? You could download the projections from Lineup HQ that we currently have. So I'm going to click on that button. I'm going to get the file. Okay? It's going to be a CSV file. I'm going to save it. Now I'm going to move over because I can only show one screen at a time. So I'm going to show my entire screen on the second screen here. Okay? Because I have 3 screens in front of me. So I'm going to take that file, right? I'm going to open it up. And you see these columns. This is the tab that says Insert Projections. And it has all the projections that we normally have here. This is baseball, but whatever. It doesn't matter. The sport doesn't matter. This works for anything. You don't have to fill in all the columns. You just have to fill in the ones that matter. So if you see here, the file that it looks like from Lineup HQ looks like this. I'll drag it over here. Right? So it has all these columns. Player ID, team, opponent, position, name, and then it has fantasy points, projected ownership, all this type of stuff in it. Okay? So I'm going to cut and paste, right? What columns? Up to projected owned, right? Copy, right? I just copied all the columns. And I'm going to put it in the spots that it should. So I paste it here. And there you go, right? I'm also going to need the ceiling, the floor, and the salary. Okay, so I'm going to cut and paste columns J and K, also over. Ceiling and floor, paste. Done. Copy the salary column. I don't think we need the salary column for this, for the lineup simulator. I don't think it matters. For other tools, it will. We're going to paste that there. Okay, so we have all the projections. The current projections that we have in here. Now, we have a lineup screen. And here, player, 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 player. You don't have to worry about the headings. So all you have to do, you could switch between DK Showdown, FD Showdown, and regular, right? Because Showdowns have captains and MVP spots and stuff like that. Regular doesn't. Classic doesn't. So I'm going to open up. I'm going to download. I'm going to export. There's an export button in Lineup HQ for the 4 lineups that we have. Right? So I'm going to download that. I'm going to click on the download, and I'm just going to see here. Look, here are the 4 lineups. Okay? So now remember, lineup 1 and lineup 2 only projected, right? Lineup 1 and lineup 3, technically, right? It's a 2v2. One has Najee Marshall and Eric Gordon, and the other one has Mathurin and Stewart. I believe that's the 2v2 between the first 2 lineups. So I'm just going to take the first 2 lineups, right? So I'm going to copy. You see here. All you have to know is cutting and pasting and copying. That's all you need to know for this. I'm going to put this here. I'm going to paste these 2 lineups. They're right here, right here, right in that zone. Now I can go to the lineup simulation screen, and it will show me, based on the median and the floor and the ceiling, what the win percentage if we ran this out 1,000 times. So it's a Monte Carlo sim of 1,000, right? And you could change the randomness. Now, what is randomness? Let's do this first. If we set this on 0, the first lineup is going to win all the time. Okay? So let me switch back screens. Or I'll drag this over so you can see it, right? Right, so I don't have to switch back and forth. So remember, randomness of 0 means that whatever the median is, it's always going to be the median, right? If you set a randomness of 0%, that means if the player's median is 10, his outcome in 1,000 sims will be 10 every single time. There will be absolutely no variance to his outcomes. So that means one lineup that projects for 0.1 more median will win all the time because they're always going to hit their median. So once you add randomness, if I added 10% randomness, that means the distance between the floor and the ceiling, 10% in one direction and 10% in the other direction, now gets to choose as well. So instead of 10, let's say 10% of 10, let's say in his distribution is like 9.7 to 10.3, which means on every simulation, it'll be 9.7 to 10.3. A little bit more in the middle, right? Because remember, there's more outcomes towards the middle. So in some sims, some instances, some trials, 10.2, 9.8, 10.1, 9.7. Like it keeps on going like that. Ding, 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 ding. In between that zone, 10% plus or minus. 50% would be halfway to the 1 standard deviation zones, right? So like halfway through. So if the median projection was 10, maybe it goes from 6.5 to 13.8 or something like that. 100% randomness, which means you take it all away from the 1 standard deviation up or down, for this tool at least. So if you set randomness at 100%, that means it will take the entire floor and ceiling very, very wide. Okay? You're introducing a ton of variance. 0%, no variance. 10%, a little, just a tad. 25%, a little bit more. 50%, probably around where you should be, variant-wise. And then after 75%, a whole bunch of variance, and 100%, a ton of variance. Okay? So understand what that randomness is. So we set randomness in this tool for 0 for these 2 lineups. Obviously, the number 1 is going to win all the time. Because the median on that lineup is, right? We have the median total. We have here, it says what? 301? 300, right? We have the median floor. I mean, yeah, these are just the outcomes. 295.94, 295.61. The only difference between these two lineups is 0.33, very minuscule. Okay? But let's say we up the randomness to 10%. Right? Now we can run simulate. You press the button, it runs 1,000 simulations. That's how quick it is. It's just a Monte Carlo. So we introduce just a teeny bit of variance. The first lineup we see here wins like 55% of the time, 55-45. We introduce just a teeny bit of variance. Because one lineup may have a slightly higher ceiling, one may have a slightly lower floor, very little. That's 10%. How about at 25%? Okay, we introduce a little bit more variance. We still get like 50, 53, 46, 53, 50, about 54, 46. Let's say we introduce 50% randomness. Okay? A decent, a reasonable amount. Right? Now we're getting about much closer. 52, 48, 53, 47. Right? We were just running these sims, right? Because actually the lineup one has a slightly higher ceiling. Slightly higher ceiling. It has a slightly higher median, but also slightly higher ceiling. We could tell from the standard deviation. When the standard deviation is higher, that means the range of outcomes is a little bit wider. So what does this represent? Just these two lineups. These are two of the top optimal lineups. The first and the third, right? It's a 2v2. Remember what we talked about yesterday about, do I play this or do I play that? Do I play Najee Marshall and Eric Gordon? Or do I play Benedict Mathurin and Isaiah Stewart? I'm racking my brain. Look at the difference. If you're playing a head-to-head, if you introduce just a reasonable amount of variance, like dude, like it's 52-48. Remember, the rake in these head-to-heads are 10%. I mean, you're around there. 10%, 11%, 9%. Like, how do you win enough? You can't. Both players are losing players. Right? So for cash games or anything like that, if you're racking your brain over this 2v2, one is slightly better than the... You're right. One is slightly better. If you were to play this head-to-head against an opponent 1,000 times and you ended up with the lower lineup, you'd be like minus 12% ROI. And the other guy will be minus 8% ROI or something like it. It will all match out to like both of you combined will be like essentially the rake, a little bit less than the rake. That's about it. So if you want to be a slightly less loser, you pick the first lineup. If you want to be a slightly more, there's no way to be a profitable. There's no way to be plus ROI when you account for the rake. Between this 2v2. Now let's say instead of that second lineup, right? We're gonna now paste in that fourth lineup. I'm gonna copy and I'm gonna replace it here. The fourth lineup has Shai Gilgeous-Alexander instead of Zach LaVine. So basically, we got Isaiah Stewart. So Marshall and Gordon. Marshall and LaVine versus Stewart and Shai in SGA. Okay, that lineup, that fourth lineup, projects for 294.96. So basically, a point below, 1 full point. In median. But remember that SGA may have a slightly higher ceiling. So let's see between these two lineups, which comes out the more. Right, we go to lineup simulations. We introduce a reasonable amount of variance, 50%. That's fine with me. And we refresh the sims. 51-48, 51-49. Oh, there's some instances where the other lineup wins. 52, 50, here's 50-49, right? The standard deviation of the second lineup is actually lower because SGA's floor, I think, is higher than normal for his price range. So we see that the floor may be higher on the lower lineup. So see here, like when we ran 1,000 times, the bottom lineup actually outscored the first lineup because the first lineup has slightly wider range of outcomes, slightly wider standard deviation. But you see these numbers here. I know it's a little bit small on the screen. It's still like if you just, this is 1 point projected median lower. 1 point lower. The difference between these two lineups from an outcomes perspective, if you were to face each other in a head-to-head, doesn't beat the rake either. Still doesn't beat the rake. It still doesn't. So which lineup do you play? Well, if you're playing against opponents that are playing a similar lineup or one of these four lineups like that, you're just going to be a slightly less loser. That's it. You're not going to be profitable in the long run. The rake is going to eat you. You need to find people that are willing to play lineups that are much lower than this. And if people are willing to play lineups that are much lower than this, playing the lineup 1 or lineup 4, what does that matter? Yeah, lineup 1 will be slightly more profitable against someone that's willing to play a lineup that's like 5 points lower projected. Let's simulate that. Let's do that. Let's build lineups like that. Okay, so I got my 4 lineups there. I got a lot of windows. Got a Linos. The bottom of Excel, you can increase the zoom to like 140%. Oh, yeah, you're right. I could do that. Okay, hold on. Okay, yeah, okay. There we go. Okay, we got it. I still need the button. I still need, where's the button? Okay, the button's on the bottom. Okay, just on that screen. Okay, I got it. Okay, we're good. It's a little bit bigger. So I'm now going to go back to lineup HQ, and I'm going to build maybe 300. I'm going to build 300 lineups. Let's see. Well, let's build 150. Right? So I'm going to build the top 150 or top 100. Let's do 100 for time's sake. Top 100. That would determine it. We were trying to say, okay, the top one versus the fourth one with the 2v2. Now let's see what the 100th lineup is. What does it look like? So I'm going to build 100 lineups. Right? There's no sense of any exposure or core. There's no settings. And then just give me the top 100 pretty much in a row. So I'm going to keep on going, and we're going to build 100. Okay, so we built 100. We still got that top lineup up there, right? I don't have the screen up. The top lineup is 295.94. The bottom lineup is 291.57. Okay, so I'm gonna export this. Get rid of that. Export this. Save it. Bring it up. So you can see here, you get the lineups right here, all the way down here. So now I'm going to take the bottom lineup. The lineup projects for what? 4 points lower. Copy. All right, just that lineup. I'm going to go back to the lineup screen and paste it in the second spot. Right, so we have the top projected optimal. People are like, oh, optimal lineup, got to play it in head-to-heads, got to play it in double-ups, you got to do it. You can't play a lineup below it. You can't play the second or third or the fourth, which we've already shown is still fine. That's not where the money comes from. If you're playing one of the top 4, top 5, and you're playing someone else that has the top 4, top 5, in the long run, you're both going to lose. So here's the 100th lineup. Right, so this one still has McConnell, Nembhard, Johnson, Turner, Levine, but this one has Kobe White, KJ Martin, DeMontis Sabonis. This one has Vooch, Gordon, and Marshall. Okay, so this lineup projects like 4 points median lower. Let's see how they fare against each other with a reasonable amount of variance. Okay, 60-39. So there we go. 61-38, 60-39, 59-40, 60-39. Right? If we keep on doing this, right? We keep on refreshing, right? So keep running these 1,000 sims or whatever. This is like a 60-40 lineup. What's the break-even point of head-to-heads? especially in the lower stakes, where it's like, what, 11% rake? 10, let's just call it 10% rake. With 10% rake, you have to win at least 55%. You need to win 55% of the time to break even. If you're playing a double, if you're playing a 50-50, you have to win 55% of the time to break even. If you're playing opponents that are playing this 100th optimal lineup, now you're profitable, right? You're winning more than 55% of the time. Okay? That lineup projects for 4 points lower. Right? We keep on running these sims, 58-42, right? Is it wildly profitable? No, but it's profitable. I mean, cash games, these are the edges that you're grinding out. So if someone were to play the 100th top optimal, the 100th, you'd still only be maybe a 60% favorite over them. So if they beat you, like we talked about yesterday with the mental health aspects of not going on tilt, playing well, not changing your process because of one outcome on one slate. Someone you saw said, someone played KJ Martin and Sabonis in cash against me? I should beat this guy. This guy's lineup is 4 points lower projected than mine. Yeah, you're still only at 60% favorite. Right? You're still only a 60% favorite, right? Imagine we took, instead of the 100th lineup, right, we took one of the other bot. Let's say we take the 50th lineup or one of these lineups. Let's take a look at here's one without TJ McConnell. Right, we have a non-TJ McConnell lineup. I'm trying to find one in the thing that looks like a little bit. Here's a Josh Giddey lineup. Oh, here's one with Giddey and Jokic. Okay, so this one is a little bit different. Here's Onyewu. Okay, so I'm going to take this one. So this is like the 57th lineup, it looks like. I'm going to take the 57th lineup, right? So not all the way down. And this lineup, the 57th lineup, let's take a look on lineup HQ. Yeah, somewhere like 2.5 points lower projected, something like that, right? So this lineup, yeah, they share a bunch of players, but this one has Jokic and Giddey and Martin. So this is like a 3v3. Okay? 2.5 points lower projected. I go to lineup simulations with a reasonable amount of randomness. 57, 43, 50, 55. So the top lineup, 55, 57, 56, 57, 56, is still profitable over that lineup. Not by much. Really not by much. It's like 57, 43-ish. We keep on running this. 58, 42, 56, 43, 57, 43. I mean, like, a little bit. You'll win 57, 58% of the time. The other lineup will win 42% of the time-ish. You'll eke out like a nice 2% ROI in cash or something like that. Like, maybe. Something like, once you account for the rake. Okay? So if you saw someone play, someone played Giddey in cash against me? Someone played Jokic over this other guy? I mean, like, well, they're horrible. Their lineup is their lineup projects for 2.5, 3 points lower than mine. I should crush them. No, you're gonna win like 57% of the time. That's it. Which is profitable for a small amount. Now imagine you're only playing like $100 in volume. What does that represent? What is your expected return here? If you were to play $100 and you only played against this lineup, so you're playing whatever, $100 head-to-head, something, right? Something like that. Your expected return is $2. That's it. That's it. 2% ROI, something like that. That's it. $2. $2. Someone played. It's like, oh, I can't believe they played KJ Martin. I can't believe. I played the top optimal. This one's 2.5 points lower. Why is my cash game ROI like barely over break even, or at times under break even? I mean, because you can't go by small sample size. Over a long sample size, why 2%? It's like, yeah, because you're not finding people that play substantially weaker lineups when you account for the rake. You're making a little bit, not that much, right? So really, the differences between those two lineups aren't that dramatic either. They're at least better to beat the rake. If someone's playing lineups that are 50th, right? 2.5, 3 points, 4 points, 5 points lower than projected. But you do find head-to-heads. I play plenty of head-to-heads, and I used to play in NBA all the time. I'd find head-to-heads, $50 head-to-heads, where a guy's playing a lineup that's 21 points lower projected than mine. From a median standpoint, it's like that guy's dead. But I'm also playing a ton of head-to-heads, $5 head-to-heads against people that are playing a lineup, one of the top 5 blended optimals, aggregate optimals or RG optimals. We're just trading money. We're losing to the rake. I mean, it didn't matter which ones we chose. 2v2, who cares? If you're in a double up, you're an 11-man double up or something, and you and 10 other people are all playing like a 2v2 off of like the projected top optimal or something like that, you're all losing. Someone's going to be a slightly less loser. But no one's losing that much money. You're basically just all chopping the rake. They're kind of breaking even from there. So you're all going to be like a negative 1.5% ROI or something like that. Some people are going to be -1. Some people are going to be -2. But no one's going to be positive. You need people that are playing significantly worse lineups. Once you introduce an 11-man double up, one person that's willing to play a lineup that's 20 points lower projected, well, all of their EV starts going to everyone else. But only one person that does it that badly just covers the rake, essentially, for you. So even the most profitable player in that 11-man double up that plays a slightly higher, than the other 9 other opponents that aren't the bad player, that person has like a 0.4% ROI. Maybe. Like something like that. The worst may like break even or minus 0.2% ROI. Now, once you introduce a second player that also plays a lineup that's like 12 points lower projected, all of the EV for those 2 players go to the 9 others. And now the top player that has the top median projected optimal, now they're making like 3 or 4% ROI. The guy below him is making 3%. The guy below him is making 2.7%. The guy below him, 2.4%. The guy below him, 1.8%. You're all taking the EV from the 2 really bad lineups, and it's going towards the top. Right? This is for cash games. We're not considering ownership. We'll talk about that next week, right? Because I just want to show off the tool. So this really puts things in perspective. Here's an actual, simple simulation. It's still blunt. As Trevor points out in the chat, do you need player correlations to make an effective simulation? Yes, you do. Especially in NBA, where if one player scores a lot, his teammate is less likely to be scoring points. Well, that's not always the case, but that would be true, right? If you simulate an NFL and this quarterback scores 40 points, it's more likely that the wide receiver, or vice versa. If Tyreek Hill has 45 fantasy points, like Tua doesn't have 8, right? They could be rushing touchdowns, I guess. Like the players are correlated to some extent. Yes, this doesn't account for that. This is a more blunt. This is a more precise method of just simply looking at floor and ceiling projections, but it's still blunter than building all the correlations into all this. That's why I said these are just simply player-based Monte Carlo sims. This is not what you should be taking and like looking at the preciseness of this. You should be using this as a blunt tool. All of the things that we include with the theory of DFS and all the stuff that I teach is all about using blunt methodologies that are still way more precise than the bad players in that play DFS. And there's enough of an edge, even in 2023, to make money and be profitable, be a winning player in any format using these concepts where you don't have to build out. You don't have to be like Nerdy Tenor in chat and build out all this complex stuff. You need computer programming and everything, and a PhD in math. We've built these things for you, these little tools. I wouldn't be using this tool to weigh 2 different cash lineups. Like, I'm just using this to highlight the fact that the difference between the top optimal and the 20th optimal functionally is about the same. The thing that's going to make you profit is finding the contests where people are willing to play way worse lineups than that on average. So even if you played the 20th optimal, you'd be profitable. You wouldn't be as profitable. You'd have a bit more profit playing the first or the second and the third. But even at the 20th, you'd still be profitable. So if you're playing the right contests with weaker opponents, you're not making money from the 2v2s. You're making money from the contest and the bad players. So don't worry about what McLovin has in the contest. You're playing a whatever, 23-man double up. Oh, McLovin's in there. Uticow's in there or something, right? Because they're playing everything. They're playing one cash lineup and everything. Who cares what they have? Right? Oh, they have a 2v2 off of my lineup. I should have played that lineup. Who cares? The point is, fine. Out of the 23 people, how many people download the 23 lineups and go, what was the projection of all these lineups? You could find a bunch of lineups, 3, 4, 5 lineups that are like, wow, these guys played 8 points lower projected. This one's 12 points lower projected. That's where your money comes from. How big your share of that money is, that may be the 2v2 type of thing. But the share difference is going to be very minuscule. If you're playing a lineup that is like, oh, this McLovin played a lineup that, based on my projections, is 0.5 lower. In basketball, that's nothing. His projections had it slightly higher in one direction. You're both probably still making money as long as you have weak enough opponents in your contests. If you're playing a 23-man double up and everyone is playing one of the top 20, let's just even say one of the top 20 optimals based on RG projections, none of you will be profitable. None of you. You're all losing to the rake. Okay? Now, the outcome of that one slate may matter. Oh, I lost this slate. But in the long run, if all 23 of you played this contest and you constantly put one of the top 20, which are all sorts of different 2v2s and 3v3s and everything like that, you're all going to be losers. Just to an extent of who's going to be the smallest loser versus a slightly bigger loser. No one's going to lose huge. So this gets back to the concept from last week of where does the money come from? And you're going to utilize these lineup simulations to show what is the difference. Now, if you're playing stuff like triple ups, 3-mans, 5-mans, I described last month, finding where the edge is, where you may be going like that a 31-man triple up, where most of the opponents. You go, oh, all 30 of my opponents are playing one of these top 5 lineups. Right? So they're really tied to, their points are really tied together. Okay? But that's good for double ups and 50-50s and head-to-heads. But now, if I could beat one of their lineups, I could probably beat most of their lineups because they're all sharing the same. Everyone's sharing like 6 players together, right? They're sharing 5 players together, similar 1v1s and 2v2s. That's like the 30 opponents have a very combinatorically similar lineup. So if you could beat one of them, you could beat all of them. So like, how often do you have to beat them if you're only getting paid 2x, you got to beat them 55% of the time, which you're not going to be able to do if you play a lineup that's similar to theirs or lower projected. Like you're not going to beat them enough. But for 3x, how often do you have to beat that lineup? And then also beat the rake. Well, if you didn't account for the rake, you have to beat that lineup or one of those types of lineups, what? A third of the time? If you didn't account for rake, a third of the time. 33% of the time. Once you add rake, and once you add the fact that not everyone is playing the same, if all 30 of your opponents were playing literally the same lineup, you're essentially playing a head-to-head now. That's it. but you're getting paid 3x for it. So how often do you have to beat all these little combinations? Probably around, and also beat the rake, probably 38% of the time. Something like that. Around 38-ish. So now if you knew your opponents, right, I'm showing you how you could use this tool for this type of stuff, right? If you knew your opponents were playing a lineup that is very similar to the top optimal, right? And I played I tried to find a lineup that had the least amount of play, like as much of a 2v2, like 3v3, 4v4 off of that lineup. Right? Here's a lineup. McConnell, Nembhard, Barrett, Covington, Valanciunas. Okay, this may be weird. This is the 98th lineup. Okay, so this projects for like 4 points lower. Right? I'm gonna put this here. Right? It still has McConnell, Nembhard. Still has Levine, Johnson, and Vucevic. But it has Barrett, Covington, and Valanciunas instead of Marshall, Turner, and Gordon. So it's a 3v3. Right? So I found a 3v3. And if many people are playing something very similar to number 1, how often does number 2, which still projects 4 points lower, with the floors and ceilings, with the entire range of their projection, not just the median, how often does it beat that first lineup? It doesn't beat it, but how often does right? 37% right here. 30. So the top lineup wins 33, 30, the bottom line, the lineup that I chose, 37%, 37%, 37%, 38% here, 37. So it's right on that threshold that if I was playing lineups that all look very similar to number 1, that if I were to play a 3-man or a 5-man or a triple up or something where I get paid more than double, triple, 3x, this lineup number 2 will be close to pretty much break even with the rake. Maybe slight loser. Even though it projects way low. I mean, it projects almost 5 points lower, median-wise. Let's say I don't go down even that lower. Try to find, here we go. Let's see. All these lineups, you're probably playing McConnell, Nembhard. I mean, they're going to share a lot of players. Let's try this line. Here's a Gordon lineup. Where's a non-Gordon lineup? Let's take a look. Let's take a look for something in the middle. KJ Martin, Keldon Johnson, Paolo Banchero. I want like a non-Gordon lineup. Caruso. Does the first one have Turner? Yeah, these are all kind of 3v3s. Here's one without, here's one without McConnell. Nembhard, Levine, Johnson, Bogdanovich, Turner, White, Gordon, Vooch. Is that a 2v2? Is that a 3v3? I guess Kobe White's in there. Well, let's take the first non-McConnell lineup, actually. Let's just take the first non-McConnell lineup. Right, which is like that looks like the 28th lineup. We didn't play McConnell, but we're obviously sharing. It's a 2v2, right? Because we're Covington and Giddey is in this lineup. So let's just take that lineup. We're not playing McConnell, playing this lineup, which looks like it's probably maybe a 1.5, 2 points lower projected. And let's run it now. Okay, I win 30 with that lineup, 39, 40% of the time, 39, 40, 41, 39, 40, 38, 39, 40. So if you were in that situation with that triple ups, you're going to be profitable now. Not greatly profitable, but profitable enough. 40% of the time, you beat a lineup that looks like that, right? And in this tool, you could do up to 10 lineups. So for instance, if I just took the top 10 optimals based on the floor and ceiling, right? I copy and paste it here. Right? So now I got 10 of them. It'll tell you the win rate, all the stats. and how often, what its share of equity, I guess, is. Right? How often it wins based on the floor and the ceiling. This one has a lower, this one looks like lineup 3 has a lower ceiling. Right? So we could refresh, we could run this. Lineup 5 came out a little bit more ahead. Right? You have to just keep on running like this. Right? So we see here, it's like, it seems like lineup 5 has a lower standard deviation than our top lineup. So actually it has a higher floor. That's why a lot of times it's coming out ahead. Like the median, you see here? So lineup 5, which is McConnell, Nembhard, Johnson, Stewart, Turner, SG. Yeah, it's the SGA lineup, right? Because we saw when we were comparing people, SGA had that floor and that distribution. The floor outcomes are a little bit more than the ceiling outcomes. So it's a little bit tipped. Which means in a amongst all these lineups, like, even though it projects median-wise lower than lineup 3 actually has maybe slightly leaning towards the ceiling side. Right? McConnell, Nembhard, Mathurin, Stewart, Turner, Levine, Johnson, Vooch. Now, if you're going to use this tool and go, well, now I'm going to choose lineup 5 over lineup 3, or lineup 3 over lineup 5. None of it matters. We're picking the top 10. If everyone is playing one of these 10 lineups, you're all losing, right? So which one you choose just determines whether or not how small of a loser you're going to be, right? No one's going to be a big loser. Someone's going to be minus 7% ROI. One person's going to be minus 8% ROI. One person's going to be minus 10, something like that, around the rate. The biggest loser will be minus 14%, minus 13% ROI. You're just sharing the rake, the loss on the rake. So it's not a matter of like, oh, this is what I'm going to shoot. Now, in the instance of, I think I know what my opponents are playing. So if I say that I know there are going to be a bunch of people that play lineup 1. I know there may be a bunch of people, maybe a little bit less, that play lineup 3 or lineup 5. Maybe you get projections from somewhere else and you run theirs, right? And you go, okay, what are people playing if they see these projections? Oh, they may be playing this 2v2. So you choose that lineup. So maybe you're filling out these lineups with what you expect your opponents to play in these types of contests, these double up, triple up, quintuple up, because they play the same lineups a lot of times. And then you go, okay, what's the lowest projected lineup I could choose? What's the lineup that has the most combinatorically advantageous lineup? That's a 3v3, 4v4, 5v5, 6v6 that I could get while still maintaining enough fair share of equity that I'm profitable. That's what you could be doing with this lineup simulation. And you could also do it. You could also do it when you're comparing ownership, which we'll talk about next week. But that's what this tool does. It's a simple tool. This isn't precise. We're just running Monte Carlo sims. We're not using correlation coefficients. We're not doing anything else. We're just taking the floor and ceiling projections and the median projections and just 1,000 times for each player. That's it. And then putting them together in a lineup and seeing what the lowest outcome, the highest outcome, the standard deviation, and the win percentage between the lineups that you have in your slots. That's it. Greg R says these sims are just picking a random number. They're not picking a random number. They're picking a distributionally random number. There are more outcomes towards the median, right? If you do 50% randomness, it's not doing it randomly, right? If we take a look at the normal distribution, right? It's not just picking randomly equally between here and here, because there are more outcomes in the middle, right? So it is picking randomly, but let's say the median, let's say we put on 100% randomness, right? So we're picking between -1 and +1 standard deviation. Okay? So let's say the middle is 10 and this is 5 and this is 15. It's not, the amount of 5s is way lower than the amount of 8s, than the amount of 9s, than the amount of 10s. So yeah, it is picking randomly, but it's not equal. There aren't as many 5s to pick randomly, and there aren't as many 15s to pick randomly as there are 8s, 9s, 10s, right? So it is still picking randomly, but there's based on the distribution. It's not linear. Linear randomness is just random. Everything is weighted the same way. We'll talk about that next week, and we have an ability to do that in Lineup HQ. It's called True Range Randomness. We'll talk about that next week. So you can pick up tools like this. This comes with the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports for advanced players. Go pick it up, theoryofdfs.com. These are one of the tools. Little simple thing. All you have to do is cut and paste stuff. If you got any questions about this tool, the tools in the course, stuff like this, projection-wise, we'll be talking about next week. Submit any questions you want. Questions at theoryofdfs.com. I will cover it all. This is unstructured learning. Give me those thummy thumbs. You know how much I like those. Like and subscribe. This is free content. Probably stuff that shouldn't be free. But good thing there aren't thousands of people that watch this, right? So take advantage of them. Take advantage of them. And I will see you next week. We'll cover some stuff with James on Monday. We got NBA stuff later today. We got playoff NFL content. We got tons of stuff. Subscribe to RotoGrinders. We got some of the best content in the business. And then come back here in the morning and learn. Unstructured learning of DFS strategy. Monday through Friday, 11 o'clock Eastern. On the DFS pregame show. On RotoGrinders.com.